422. Let's go ahead and just create our group soul by just landing into this moment now, just celebrating this time that you have carved for yourself. Just allowing the day to melt away from wherever you've been coming from, whatever you've been doing. I think I'm actually gonna layer off and moving around a bit. It's a little bit warmer. I got my Palo Santo here. Got my incense burning over here. My name is Sheena with Rise Wellness, and this is Gene Key Contemplations with the Sacred Wild. I am so grateful to be here. I am so happy to be a part of this community. You know, this actually hits my sweet spot in a certain kind of way. This gene key that we're in right now, this is the gene key of teamwork. This is gene key 44. This is the shadow of interference, the gift of teamwork, and the divine essence of Synarchy. And if I can be really, really honest with myself, I have a huge desire to cultivate communities and be within and among communities, sharing our magic, sharing our voices. And yet I'm also very aware that it's not my forte to set up the technology, to set up structure and form around a lot of these things. And that's why I feel so unbelievably grateful and blessed to be here with Jen Morales. You are a goddess. I'm so enamored with you. I'm so blown away by your commitment, your devotion to setting up these places when I know you have a million things that you could be doing, and you are doing them, you know? So let's just give a little shout out to Jen Morales, who has really been a pioneer on this journey. I haven't yet met Paul, but I'm excited to begin weaving with him here in this virtual community. So I just want to take a moment to honor this team that we are all weaving alongside. Let's just go ahead and take just another deep breath. If we haven't already, let's take the deepest one we've had all day, all the way in from the base of our belly, up, 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 up. When you think you can't hold it anymore, hold it a little bit more. Take another little sip in, and then hold it, hold it, hold it. And release, sounding it out, letting it all go. So Gene Key 44, I decided I wanted to start off this week with the wisdom story. And from the wisdom story, we're going to go into embody the archetype. And this is going to be through a resource that I love for the Gene Keys. It's actually through human design, but it's called Unlock Your Design 64 Doors. Richard Rudd does a lot with Bella, the founder of Unlock Your Doors, and she has been a human design expert for a long time. In the way that she mirrors the two technologies together are really fascinating, really beautiful, and really allowing us to see the astrology and also the archetypes by just naming the archetypes. And so I really, really, really recommend that as another resource. But first, let's get started with the Wisdom Keeper story of the week. So this is coming from another great resource, The 64 Faces of Awakening by Dr. Rosie Aronson. This is another collab teamwork in the Synarchy of the Gene Keys that she does the dream arc. So if you have any interest in looking at the shaman path of the gene keys, that is through the technology of the dream arc. It's not a course that I've dabbled into yet. I have such a curiosity and desire to, and it's just about finding the right time. So I'm kind of in and out. And in the fluorescence sisterhood, there is a sister there that is leading a call that is allowing us to play in that dream arc, playing with those animal totems. So definitely recommend that as well. So this is the oracle card, and this is the image for Gene Key 44. And let's read the wisdom story. It starts out with a Richard Wright quote that says, "The gift of teamwork is therefore about recognizing who belongs in your life." The programming partner to this is Gene Key 24. Forgetting right now. The shadow of addiction, the gift of invention, the divine essence of silence. So when we think about one, we always got to think about the other. So when we're thinking about the shadow of interference, we should also be thinking about the shadow of addiction. What are we addicted to? A lot of times we're addicted to these old narratives, these old storylines, these old karmic ties. And so this Gene Key story, here we go. My mother abandoned us when I was little. Though my father wanted to do right by his 5 children, he couldn't. He often got overwhelmed and disappeared for days, blowing his money on gambling and leaving me, the oldest, in charge of my younger siblings. I had no choice but to grow up fast and accept more responsibility than a boy should have to. As a young man, I wrote off all women, entered the workforce, and naturally gravitated towards positions of leadership. People tended to trust me, and I preferred to be at the helm, even if it was the helm of a sinking ship. Time after time, no matter how good a job or organization looked on the outside, I managed to misjudge it. My higher ups either disappeared or dropped the ball. My staff rarely knew what to do, and I'd be left picking up the slack. Then I'd go through it all again somewhere else. I saw the same mess everywhere, in politics, in religion, in the economy, in love. Leaders were abandoning the people, and people were abandoning themselves and each other, and no one seemed to care. I distrusted everyone. Until one day, a woman walked into my life that did care. Though she came from an indigenous background, completely different from my own, there was something strangely familiar about her. I liked her smell, and I was immediately drawn into her world. She had an uncanny ability to trust, not just the trees, rivers, and birds, but people, me. She helped me see the perfect irony of my life and how my childhood story was repeatedly interfering with my life, but in different disguises. As soon as I saw the pattern, it began to change. My distrustful heart opened, and for the first time in my life, I let a woman into my heart. As I surrendered to our intimacy, I developed quite a nose for people. More and more kindred spirits entered my life. Soon I was invited to work and live inside of a community that was capable of synchronistic and seamless forms of collaboration. I had never known this kind of joy or teamwork. All participants contributed what they loved most. Everyone shared the burden of responsibility. And much more often than not, things went smoothly. Now I know the true experience of belonging. My gift to you. I come to remind you that you always attract the relationships that teach you exactly what you need to know in order to grow. The more you trust that people are in your life for a reason, the more you'll be able to learn the relational lessons you need to learn. And the better your judgment will be when it's time to choose new partners, friends, and collaborators. I want you to trust your instincts. Start smelling the people in your life. Ask yourself, who are my true allies? You have the potential to experience more trust, harmony, and teamwork in groups than you can possibly imagine. When you have found your true team, your destiny will naturally and magically unfold. Questions for contemplation. Do you have difficulty trusting people? Do you keep them at an arm's length? Do you keep running into the same unhealthy relational dynamics? Are your instincts often off? What old relationships are interfering most with your new ones? Think of a time when you experienced or witnessed teamwork. Draw a map of your current relationships. Indicate who are your true allies. Who do you trust? Who don't you trust? Be honest. Take a look at the people you've struggled with most in your life. If they were here to teach you something, what would it be? So I love this card. This is one of my favorite gene keys for a very like mysterious unknown reason, other than the fact that I got to meet my twin flame, my soul sister. And since I have met her, it's only been about 2 or 3 years. I have just had that immediate familiarity. When we first met each other, this was at a yoga studio at a metaphysical shop that had retreats and workshops and whatnots. And I had had a very clear download to go to this yoga studio. The download came in that I was going to have a yoga studio and an event space and a meeting place. And so, as I just moved to Sarasota and got this really clear download that I should open up this meeting space that has yoga and metaphysical apothecary items and, a gathering place with, retreats and workshops and stuff. And so I looked and saw, well, I'm sure that, there's probably something like that in the area. So let me look one up. And I found one that was called Wild Ginger Apothecary. And as a ginger who's super wild, I was like, let's go. And so once I started going there, it was super divine alignment. Everything in my whole being was moved through, and knowing that I was meant to connect with this apothecary. I was meant to connect with people that were there. I signed up for my first event there, which ended up being a Juneteenth summer solstice event, which was a complete heart opening, expansive cacao ceremony with yoga sun salutations and sound healing. It was very transformative for me. And it set me off on a path of going to this place. And there was a name of a woman that I heard over and over again named Jamie Day. And before I had ever met her, I had known of her, which is not the case that we get for too many people these days. But everybody would just say she was just such an incredible healer. She was an incredible friend. She was an amazing mom. She was such a doting wife. And she was just the whole package. And there happened to be a particular event that she was having where she was promoting a book that she had just come up and was going to be starting a sisterhood in a circle where they were going to have a virtual space of connecting and sharing about this book. So shout out to Jamie Day. This book is called Soul to Sisterhood. You can find it on Balboa Publishing, on Amazon, on her website. But Soul to Sisterhood is a collection of 180 women's stories, all women's stories that she knew, that she went and compiled. And from her therapy background, her social worker background, her esoteric healing background, her highly empathetic, sensitive Cancer, sun sign background, she deep feeler. She was able to beautifully articulate the wisdom of overcoming 180 challenges that every woman would be able to find themselves in these stories. Along with each story, there was a collection of sacred play exercises, which we've, playfully renamed shadow work. We do enough work these days, so sacred play. And then, songs and crystal wisdom. And this truly is a Bible of just alchemical, witch, ancient wisdom, the laws of the universe, the hermetic principles, the gene keys, the human design, the collective shared wisdom of 180 stories. And so she went on to start doing these virtual spaces where each week we would share about a story, like a book club, like a sacred book club. Well, we would also share within our connection with the story and then do some of these esoteric healing practices together. And so I met her at this apothecary as she was endorsing this. And as soon as I met her, it was like fully locked in, like, I know you, I know you. There was no like getting to know you, small talk kind of stuff. It was like, yep, signed up. Where do I put the check? And okay, let's do this. And I ended up spending about 30 weeks in sacred play in virtual healing spaces with her. And that was just the beginning. And I will absolutely testify that she is the most incredible healer that I've ever been privileged to know. She's my best friend. She is my mentor. She is my soul sister. She is someone that consistently brings me back to life and that I have gone to when I've been in really dark places. And this particular week, I actually had an esoteric healing session with her, which was deeply, deeply restorative, and it was really interesting because I'm going to go into the archetype of the grid worker. The archetype of the grid worker is absolutely one that I identify with. And in this particular instance, as I share about this one, her archetype was very much the archetype of the hypnotist. And so a lot of the work that we've done together has been past life regression hypnotist sessions where I am going through the Akashic record, uh, learning more information about soul contracts, and each time it's very regenerative. As a hybrid soul, I always get to be hypnotized back into a place where I can also be recharged. And so it's a very esoteric relationship that I've cultivated with my dear sister Jamie. And it's one that's transformed my entire life. I would not be who I am today without the sisterhood and the teamwork and the synarchy within Jamie. And so I feel so unbelievably blessed that now that we're cultivating these virtual spaces where a highly sensitive person and energy worker, I get to have a lot of these spaces now being met virtually. And so Sacred Wild, this virtual community that we get to stay in our little bubble, our regulated nervous system, we get to go on, we get to share our magic, we get to interact with others while maintaining the convenience of not going down into some denser environments. And so what a blessing to be a modern day medicine woman. And so now I'm going to read the archetype. And I would really invite you to get into a comfortable position, whether or not this gene key is in your chart. We are made up of all of these gene keys. We have 70 trillion cells in our body that have two jobs, just to listen and respond. And that's what we're doing as we're creating this vibrational reality that we live in. And so whether we have in our hologenetic profile this gene key 44, or we have a close relationship with someone who does, we can really allow this to come seep into our DNA structure and allow ourselves to be moved by it. And so for this, I'm going to treat this like a meditation and just really invite you to get into a comfortable place. And as with anything that I say, if it doesn't feel in alignment, if it doesn't resonate, throw it in the fuck it bucket. Not everything I say has to be capital T truth. Just because I resonate with this does not mean that anybody else does. And so I want to be a testament of someone that does not have this in my profile and has also cultivated, simultaneously cultivated a really deep relationship with this gene, that I can embody this archetype. And I share that as a permission slip, that just because gene keys may not be in our profile does not mean that we don't interact with them. And so this is an opportunity to really allow ourselves to interact with this wisdom so that we can become the channel to it, so that we can embody the archetype. And this week's archetype is the grid worker. And so I'm going to be reading this. And again, this comes from Unlock Your Design from the 64 Doors. So you can find this online. And it says, the grid worker's mission is to create a grid of beings who work together and weed out the corruption all around the world. The awakening of her core human fractal represents the activation of a previously dormant code within the overall human program. As the core fractal is activated, it removes the virus that's wound around its genetic lineage. The grid worker has an instinctive memory where past experiences are held within the cellular memory of the body. She uses this to sense what's going on at any moment. She's designed to operate out of instinctive alertness based on successes and failures of the past. With intuitive awareness of whether the past is worth repeating or not, the grid worker knows when history is about to repeat itself. Not only does she know where humanity is going if we keep repeating the same patterns and expect things to change for the better, she also senses where we are off course and how we can center back into balance and synarchy through teamwork, through true teamwork, I should say. The grid worker's genius is to read others, and she can literally smell the truth. When I come around my healing circles, I can use the clairsentient, I forget what it said, the right word for it, but I get the smell of mother's milk. She can feel it if other is in alignment with her soul fractal. Much like the maestro, Gene Key 50, she can sense which gifts, skills, and potentials each person adds to the synarchy. With this instinctive knowledge, the grid worker protects herself and her allies in their important and sometimes dangerous work, the quest for a world in harmony and equilibrium. The grid worker has a close relationship and a hypnotist. Gene Key 26 in my life. This is my dear sister. As a team, they know how to present anything so that the message is recognized. The grid worker is friendly and welcoming and creates an atmosphere of healthy team dynamics, flow, and creation. I'm sorry, I read this stupid. The hypnotist is naturally convincing and artful with words and acts. The grid worker also has a close relationship with the inventor, Gene Key 24. Whereas the grid worker mainly works with finding harmony and synergy with the other, the inventor teaches us to find clarity and silence within the self. The grid worker knows how to clean karmic interference patterns in the collective, and the inventor knows how to silence the addiction patterns of our minds. Divided we fall, so together we stand, is a truth the grid worker holds close to her heart. Each core fractal has a mission and a purpose. It is up to the grid workers of the world to use their intuitive senses to smell out and unite others on the same soul fractal. We come together, we weave together, and we bring about change through teamwork. With a mission this big, we must open our hearts and cast aside our pride. We cannot possibly eliminate corruption alone. We require allies. We require trust that is built on a strong foundation of self-trust. Let your intuition lead the way, and through synchronicity and fate, you will draw your soul sisters and brothers. Side by side, hand in hand, united we rise, and together we stand. So this does give a pretty great flavor of the frequency that we can be feeling this week. The internal motivator this week is our connection to our team. I recognize my soul fractal and my mission in the world would be a great mantra for this week. Some positive attributes. This is the ultimate people reader. So this is now, when we think about this, we have to come back to remembering the astrology. So this gene is the Scorpio energy. The Scorpio energy knows how to read what's behind the veil. And it's a sought out team member because people understand that you're seeing these patterns and these characteristics of how people operate together and as a team. And so you're cleaning out karma through reconnecting with your soul fractal. So any of us on the awakening journey have had at some point to disconnect with certain relationships, whether it was a marriage, whether it was a family, whether it was a career. But there's been fractal patterns that have quite literally split off. And that is the expression of this gene. This is our fractal family. So in order to actually go on our ascension journey, there becomes a major part of us that has to disconnect. And it can be really, really challenging. And we're always invited to revisit our connection with death or with, cutting off ties and boundaries and the ends of relationships. Like, what are the ends of relationships? Sometimes we look at them as a death and we go into a mourning and it becomes a grief journey. Well, if we really look at relationships, each soul has been incarnated for us to evolve to a certain point. So, for us to keep evolving, that means we have to keep splitting off from fractal families. And so this gene can be quite dense and feel really strong to navigate through. I know for me, it absolutely is. As I really have to come into a full permission to honor what's true for my body. As I release karmic ties and relationships with people, friends, and family that no longer serve me, I'm still going to carry that grief, that sorrow about these things that we weren't able to do together, especially when it's within the family. And also, simultaneously, I can still say that because I opened up this space by releasing that fractal pattern and making a better choice for myself and who I am in this now moment, I've actually created these beautiful friendships in my life, these extremely meaningful relationships with soul family. The dilemma of this gene is hierarchy, and hierarchy is embedded and woven into all of our structure, whether we like it or not. And so our dilemma has been changing our perception around what hierarchy is, because as soon as we can change our perception, we change our awareness and we change the way that we operate from life. So the way that our cells are responding, listening, and responding, they're either going to be a victim to life, oppressed by life, or they're going to be a co-creator of life and say, I'm not actually going to be interfered by this. I'm going to work in union with this. And so at some point, our perception for most of us, because a lot of these genes are going to revisit where we were in childhood and where we were creating a lot of these early programs. And so this early program looked at how safe did we feel in our body. And many of us created this idea around our survival and 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 this fear that we're not going fast enough or not doing enough or that we're not even progressing. We have this fear that we're going backwards. And so this shadow of interference is when we're kind of all over the place. We're not going in alignment with the right people. We're making erratic choices that might be self-sabotaging or familiar, and they just keep creating these karmic loops. And so this gene really looks at incarnation, because some of us become addicted to reincarnation. And we say, well, oh, we fucked it up. Let's just do it again. And we keep getting stuck in the karmic wheel. Well, at some point, we have to break out of that karmic wheel. And when we do that, we even have to surrender to the idea that we don't have to reincarnate anymore. We can actually dissolve that sense of separateness of self and go into this hive mind, into this collective space. And in that collective space, we go outside of that wheel of samskara. So in Indian technology, we look at samskara as our karmic relationships. So these soul contracts that we might have a lot of ego or narrative around these soul contracts. These soul contracts may be the clusters, the family members that we came in with, or family members that we uh, birthed and were a relationship with. Maybe this cluster could be a dynamic in a work environment or maybe a friend and peer group. But at some point in our life, we'll have to relinquish or at least reevaluate some of these fractal family patterns that we have, these fractal ties, to say, are we still just playing out a karmic cycle or are we evolving together? So, in my this week, literally in my experience, I've been going through that mourning process of just really releasing karmic ties of family and of um, relationships that are not serving me, and coming back to something that Jen said recently that I keep coming back to and I keep sitting with is privilege. What a privilege it is to make a different choice. At some point we had our family structure and that was it. That was our tribe. We depended on this family for sustenance, for shelter, for home, for love, for education, for survival. And, at some point we leave that nest, we go out, and, what a blessing that as we go out, we can stay in alignment. We can keep allowing people to move into our life that are in the direction of the divine will. We learn from our family of origin in order to take that and ascend and grow and evolve beyond that. And so one of the things that Richard Rudd, says is we incarnate into this vessel that we will grow out of. That the ascension journey becomes this paradox of, let me be a vessel of devotion. Let me be a vessel of the energy of love. And then as we actually awaken to that energy, we create more space in ourselves for that energy to house that energy, and we get rid of all these karmic ties. We literally can't contain all the energy in the human vessel that we are right now, which is why we're going through this major evolution and this change, because we are becoming more high vibrational beings. We're just going to pry out of this little skin suit that we have. So we're being asked to go, can you think beyond this physical form? So let me look at my notes here. So the dilemma, I said, of this gene is hierarchy. It's our perception of this hierarchy. And so there's so many of us that have this fear that without hierarchy, there would be an anarchy. And there's this fear of, who would we be? Would we go crazy if there wasn't some higher power telling us what to do? And when we can actually really celebrate the uniqueness of our souls, there's a divine will of all of our higher powers that moves in synarchy to do what's good for the greatest and highest good, the highest choice for all living beings. And we know that all beings are living. And so when we actually move beyond that separate self, we can say that we're just, we're stepping into this this hive mind, this higher vibrational organism that's not so self-absorbed. Let's see. This is a gene that's all about group dynamics. It's all about relationships. So we might be the repressed version of this is someone that's distrustful. And I'll just read that out loud because it's so quick. The individual repressive nature of the 44th shadow is based upon distrust. This distrust is both an inherited trait and a conditioned one. It's a fear-based response to one's early experience in childhood and affects all of one's relationships. These are the people who have a single disastrous relationship and then shut down out of fear that the same thing happening again. Although they may not show that on the surface, this fear causes them to unconsciously distrust all relationships. Such people often find themselves working and living together with others, but at a subtle level, they keep them at an arm's length. They're haunted by their own past and rigidly defend themselves from ever experiencing love and pain again. We can all meet, I'm sure we can all relate to those people that have had some overwhelming heartbreak that they've never seemed to get over. And in some cases, these are the people that are in unbelievably unhealthy, toxic relationships that don't have any desire to get out of them because they don't have any trust in anything outside of it. So they stay in that comfort of that illusion of safety just because it's familiar and it repeats a karmic cycle that they've probably had since childhood. So the reactive nature, the outside facing of this is someone that's misjudging. The reactive side of the 44th shadow is a master of misjudgment. These people do not shut down like the repressive side, but keep making the same mistakes in their relationships. The 44th gift has a sharp instinct for people, but if the basic frequency of your vehicle is operating below optimum, your instinct misfires. Accordingly, individuals with this reactive nature ally themselves to those who really don't respect them, who turn against them, or in business, who are a drain on resources and often just plain incompetent. The classic example is someone who keeps breaking ties with certain people only to rediscover a similar pattern within the next person. What happens here is that their instinct cannot operate outside its fractal, so they make alliances that are fraught with difficulties. So, as someone that I've talked about before, my dynamic that I had propagated from childhood on the empath versus the narcissist. Well, until I had understood that that was a dynamic that I kept recreating through karmic relationships, I kept being in that cycle. And so when I got to learn about what is narcissism, when you break down narcissism, why do I keep being put in these places? And what I got to see is, there is people that did not have the privilege to work through some of their repressed emotions, and they suppressed things, and that suppression may have led to physical manifestations in the body. It may have led to experiences of heartbreak, but because they didn't process their emotions, they created a tight auric field around them, and they limited their ability to hold any sort of empathy and compassion for others. All of their energy is so tightly wound around them because they simply hadn't cultivated any survival tools, any tools of resourcefulness. And so these are the people that we're going to experience all the time in life, whether they're cutting us off in traffic or they're cutting us in line at the supermarket, or they're telling somebody off at the cash register. These are going to be the people that we're going to interact with because we have the whole the spectrum, all the hues of the human spectrum. And so we have to give ourselves the ability to have compassion. This is a lot of my journey, compassion for the people that did not have the privilege to be one with their feelings. They were too addicted to their drama. And so what happened in my experience is, to break out of that karmic tie, I had to see, why am I still addicted to the drama that's within my family, that I don't cut it off completely by removing myself from the dynamics? So there's something in there for me that I'm still looking for, I'm still longing for. I'm still thinking that I'm going to get synarchy within my family when I've been shown over and over and over again that possibility is not there. And so every time I come into that little place of hope that doesn't have a radical acceptance for what is, but has this little child hope of something that will be, that's not in full surrender, that's not in full faith, that's not in acceptance, I will create another dynamic where there will be a narcissistic embodiment or personality type that I'll be confronted with. And now I learn in those dynamics, this is my opportunity to share my boundary, to say, what do I need to do to meet my own needs? And how can they show me what it looks like to stand up for themselves. Because someone that's very self absorbed is going to give you a lot of blueprints on what it looks like to be defiant, to be triggering, to step up in their power, even when that can seem confronting at times. So while there could be a judgment that I might have around the personality type of a narcissist, what a beautiful teaching it continues to be for me to learn how can I rise up in my power instead of giving away my power to this external force, this other being in these unhealthy empath first narcissistic dynamics. So as we know, this is as within, so without. So if we are not honoring our entire spectrum of feeling, for better or for worse, we're literally creating war within us. And that war is what we experience without us. Well, right now, there's a lot of stories and narratives around a war that's on this planet. And so, And so this gene asks us to have our own internal revolution so that we're not externalizing war. Peace starts within ourselves, just like war begins within ourselves. We can either repress or excite each of ourselves in the way that they're listening and responding. So we can have an overwhelming fear around the outside influences that we have. And we can respond to hierarchies based on that low vibrational perception that life is happening to us. But freedom can only be taken away from us if we believe that freedom is outside of us. And so if we still have a war going on around within us, then we're going to keep seeing that outside of us until we remember that nobody can take away our freedom, as confronting as that feels. As long as you believe that freedom is within you, nobody will ever be able to take that away from you. So interference begins inside us. When you can really begin to understand that interference begins within you, everything can change. Let me say that again. When you can truly understand that all interference starts within you, then your entire life begins to change, because you will take radical accountability for what your cells listen to and how they choose to respond to what they listen to. And so right now we have this unbelievable ability to tap into technology, to poke in and see what's going on in every little pocket of the world. And we also have the divine privilege to see where can I be an advocate for social justice and doing something that creates or restores peace and harmony on this planet. And if I do that outwardly, it is an actual expression of something that I've transmuted internally. And if I don't feel the capacity to go into that depth, I can still be a spiritual activist. I can maintain harmony in my body when I remember that my vibratory state is my contribution to this planet. So maybe there are going to be some people that have the blueprint that's going to protest around the wars on this world, or going to go and write to their congressman. They're going to share speeches and they're going to campaign and they're going to picket and they're going to do these things. And that's wildly important. And I'm so glad that we have those people. And we will also have the beings that go into a meditative state and pray for peace and harmony to be restored on our planet. And there is no hierarchy to say that one is performing better as an activist on our planet than the other. There's actually not a hierarchy. And when we look within the way that our brain and cells operate, there's a header. And this hierarchy is actually when we join together and say, I can't do everything. It's not in my blueprint to be marching out there in the street, with a sign and say, I'm here, let me roar. That's not my blueprint. But I can stay in a place of regulated nervous system, and I can pray, and I can make a daily devotional practice of praying for all the souls and all of life to be restored to peace and harmony on our planet. And that's going to have the same ripple effect, if not greater, if I'm doing it from a regulated nervous system and I get to ripple that vibration of peace and harmony out there. Whereas if I had gone to a place where people were protesting and I tried to get out there and wave my flag, but I was scared shitless, I'm not actually emanating the vibration of peace and harmony. I'm dysregulated and I'm rippling out more fear because that's what I'm vibrationally responding to. And so, what a sacred, beautiful decision that we get to make every single day on how we are going to listen and respond to everything that comes into our field. And what a divine gift that we have more of these high vibrations happening on our planet right now that are aligning us with our soul family. We get to have these mystery schools popping up everywhere. These mystery schools where we get to share about these ancient rituals that we've been doing for millennia, where we get together and share sacred places for prayer. We get to be a revolution of heart-centered beings working in service for the whole. That's what Synarchy is. And that's what we're doing on platforms like the Sacred Wild, is we're creating safe spaces to heal. And when one person has activated the divine essence of this gene, it will be rippled out like a fractal pattern. There's a new fractal pattern that gets formed with this chosen family, continuously magnetizing people to it that's going to be on this project for the greater and higher good for all of humanity. Because when we start operating from our higher places, it's no longer about what I'm here to do. It's what we are all doing collectively together in service of the whole. And so, let's see here. There's always two rules, but there's always two messages from the gene key. Embrace, accept. So here we're asked to embrace the shadow of interference in order to accept the gift of teamwork. This is all about drawing in our healthy fractal families and our true allies. And once we start moving beyond our selfish will, but we move into the divine will, we really start seeing that life just organizes itself at a higher level into a different fractal pattern. So you really activate your, what did I write? Oh, your higher genius. And this new kind of hierarchy, it's all based on creativity and service. And so it's really this hierarchy that forms where these individuals within a system are given their freedom. Everyone gets to show up and uniquely express. And that's what's so beautiful about this particular platform, the Sacred Wild. This week I was inspired by Reverend Brianna Lynn with the Orgasmic Oracle Mystery School and her invitation for silliness. Enlightenment is about lightening up. It's about adding a levity. And I decided to follow with that little prompt and say, you know what? I know that I'm going into a dark season. We're going into the winter season. We've just got Halloween here. We've got this portal now between fall and winter. The light gets darker, the days get shorter. We kind of go a little bit more inward. We're a little bit more reflective, Scorpio season. And so, we go a little bit more into the depths in order to pull out that nectar and come back on the other side. But what a beautiful thing that we've got these little communities. So even when we're going inwards, we get to hop on to the sacred wild and engage in our community. Hey, we got a book club over here. So I can still be in my hermit, in my hibernation, and still connect and still engage in very high vibrational places, no less. Um, Let me see. Horizontal leadership honors our unique gifts. In our awakening journey, our mind loses power while our heart gains more of it. And when we move into hierarchy place from our divine essence, our heart explodes into action and organizes us and our brain into working hierarchically and self-organizing intelligence to work as a team, to be creative, and to be impulsive. I think that's really interesting. True intelligence is free. And so when we're downloading truth into our inner being and unlocking this teamwork within us, we might find that we're changing plans a lot. We might find that we had a trajectory of how we thought things were going to go. And then somebody came in with this beautiful gift and shifted it and changed it. So this week I decided, let me add laughter as medicine into the sacred wild. Let me add a little bit of levity during a dark season. So because I was gifted the freedom with Jennifer to play in this space, I said, okay, well, let's do it. Let's actually create a little creative outlet in here for us to lighten up, for us to add a little bit of levity with also some astral awareness as well. But yeah, we're just this higher vibration of teamwork is about thinking creatively, always making creative solutions, always opening up new fractal patterns. This is all about our fractal family, and it's all about releasing what no longer serves us so that we can tie with the new helixes of the ones that do. I love that the gene keys always, the gene keys will use the symbolism of the helix. And I use that emoji all the time when I'm texting people, because we really are all connected with these fractal patterns. The more we can observe that and recognize that, the more we see that we are all collectively working in this hive mind together. So it's like, all right, babe, what you need? Oh, this week you want to host a call? Oh, this week you'd rather take the back seat? Whatever you want, I got you. I know this is part of something that I'm integrating with another sisterhood that I'm with as well, where we are really being asked to add more of our creative genius into our platform, to say, let's look at each other's gene keys and let's decide here, how can we actively engage with one another in a way that's most supportive, in a way that helps to grow this community authentically by using our own unique gifts. And so the beauty of Synarchy is it doesn't ask anybody to leave any part of them behind. It doesn't ask you to remove your unique will. It just allows you to be your own beautiful song in the collective symphony. And so, whereas we may have been told to program at some point that this is how the song needs to sound, and these are the notes that you're going to play. And in this new symphony that we're creating, we are operating out of harmony. So it's not everyone playing the same note. It's creating the collective field of harmony, like jazz. It's like maybe this is like, it kind of like splits off and does this interesting, unique thing. And that's also an intrinsically unique part of that song, of that symphony. You wouldn't want to take it out. You wouldn't want to change it and blend it and auto tune it, because that little staccato at the end is what makes it so special. And so this gene key this week really invites you to look and see who is moving in your direction, or what are you aligning with? Where's your target? And have you needed to release, or are you being asked to release this week someone that you've been connected to for a while, or at least created the narrative that there's some kind of connection with, that you are ready to release? Through that release, you can actually go up into a higher frequency and connect with the next leg of your soul family. So my notes are so choppy. Let's see. So someone that's unlocked this divine essence has downloaded truth into their entire being. And they've unlocked teamwork within them. This gene invites you to surrender to your creative purpose. That's why you're here, is to create. And once you actually tap into your soul family, once you're actually being infused with love and light and strength and power and remembrance of your divinity, you have this increased vitality. This energy is liberated. This You just have this new kind of greater awareness and excitement for your soul purpose. So in my particular case, I didn't realize how much of my energy had been drained from me simply by people not supporting me, not being in alignment with what's best for me, and by me holding such a light for those people. And truly, a lot of times, just I wish they would love me. I wish my family would make better choices. I wish things were different. I'm not always in acceptance of what is, and sometimes I'm wishing it were different. And so, this gene work, this gene has really asked, to step away from all that woulda, coulda, shoulda bullshit, because when we can free ourselves from the expectation of how long we're supposed to journey with anybody, we can actually feel a little bit more confident about burning bridges that don't support us. And then we find this whole well of energy that we didn't know that we were not tapping into. And this field is all a field of a connection of creative geniuses working in service of the whole, where everyone is interconnected. Everyone is serving the higher vision. This gene is a hub for creative people, where people come around you effortlessly. People just seem to be attracted. People just keep coming to you to say, "Oh, I've got a friend that could use this," or, "Oh, I know somebody that I could set you up for this." And without you even realizing it, people are constantly stringing you and connecting you with others. I think one of the most profound, yeah, I'm going to say the most profound line that Richard Rudd kind of just sneaks right in when he's doing his contemplation is, and he says, the world didn't need saving. And he says it with such confidence. And I love to hear this because, a lot of these contemplations are recorded years ago. And so to come back into this and that remembrance of, oh, yeah, I might think sometimes that we all need to band together and save the world. And if we don't, then we're fucked. There's that little permission slip that he just drops right in there. Says, oh, by the way, the world didn't even need saving. But wouldn't it feel good to do this with people? Wouldn't it feel better to be in a collective field of creativity and genius simply because it inspires you to add more of that? So another part that's really interesting is when you look at the word hierarchy, that base there means that hieros, it means sacred. So when we really put out this idea of what hierarchy was, it was sacred leadership. And that's what we are returning back to, Hyros. And this is a Hyros. Let's look at Eros in there. How can we create a sacred leadership of honoring our Eros? And what is our Eros? Our Eros is our creativity, our sexuality, our sensuality. And so, how divine to actually cultivate creative spaces where we get to be in the highest vibration of love, of bliss, of ecstasy, of joy, of prayer, and then ripple this out 7 generations back and 7 generations forward. So, this archetype of the grid worker, what a beautiful contribution that we've all decided to make on this planet right now, simply to be the vibration of peace. And so, how can we cultivate peace? Finding things that feel like truth to us. Peace is always going to be unique for each person. Sometimes peace is going to be going to a sound healing with a whole group of people. Sometimes peace is going to be being alone in nature. There's no hierarchy. One is not better than the other. The heterarchy is the reminder that each grid worker is just as important. Whether they're in the yoga class spreading that vibration of that, that orgasmic bliss you get at the end of a workout, and sending that out into that classroom is just as potent as that nature walk and sniffing those flowers and sharing that oxygen with the trees. There's no judgment. There is no, there is no hierarchy. And I do invite you this week um, to have grace for yourself while you're looking for support, because maybe you haven't found your soul fractal family yet. And maybe you're still navigating those really dense environments of being within those soul contracts of family or relationships that are not serving you. And I really want to add empathy for what it can be like to be in those in between places sometimes. And just allow yourself the grace that simply the reframe of your perception is everything. Because we are either creating peace within us or we are creating war. And so, as so many things are happening on our planet right now, we're just invited to keep coming back to honoring whatever peace looks like for us. My version of peace is going to look different than your version of peace, and that's okay. Let me see. So this is part of the ring of Illuminati, which is interesting to consider. What is the Illuminati? Would we think the Illuminati are these media moguls secretly controlling the world and all of our systems? Or would we think of the Illuminati are these angelic beings that were arranged beyond our human evolution to tie us together for a divine purpose? I think both and, right, can be true. The Illuminati can be this mysterious um, collection of souls beyond our understanding. I feel so unbelievably blessed that I got to cultivate this relationship with my sister Jamie, because, no matter what is going on, there is someone that I just believe in my every 70 billion cells in my DNA that we are serving the same mission. And when we get together just in a meditative space of silence, the amount of data that can come through and that silence is so profound to me. And here's something interesting. Everything is being manipulated by something else. And this is what we can think about, like with the hierarchies. All systems are interrelated. So your breakthrough breaks us through. Everything's being manipulated by something else, by your awareness. We manipulate things based on our awareness. We manipulate things based on the energy that we put into something. So last night I was watching this conspiracy theory debunking The Simpsons. And it was like, okay, how do The Simpsons know everything? How were they able to predict everything? And, and they ended up testing like an obnoxious amount of episodes and, going on this big thing just to say, they're not predicting anything outside of the fact that with the amount of episodes that they've had, they're just creating more potential. And when we as a society tune into that episode and we all see that episode, we begin to crystallize that episode. And because this environment is this vibrational energy, everything that we put awareness on is creating more energy into. So would we say something has been predicted? Or because time is an illusion, we could actually say, we just all put our awareness into the same thing. It was a popular TV show. A lot of people were putting a charge into that scene. A lot of people then replaying that scene, talking about that scene. So we are actually manipulating world behavior through that predictive programming because we're setting in an ideal. And then each time somebody watches that episode, reflects on that episode, adds more intention, awareness, even in debunking conspiracy theories, it's still putting more charge into that. So it's still manipulating predictive programming, the output. It's what came first, the chicken or the egg? I believe that The Simpsons are part of the Illuminati. Do have access to things, but I do think that we are influenced by these episodes with enough people watching them that it's going to actually change our reality. I don't know if that made any sense. But yeah, again, the celebration that our uniqueness has a place in this symphony. This gene asks you to find your people, you know, go have a jam session. How wonderful is to have a jam session with your friends? And this gene is the superconductor, and the conductor is in every single one of our cells. There is not one conductor that leads the symphony. Every single one of our cells have a conductor, and every single one of us are in that divine flow of just listening to the notes that we are feeling in the field and playing them. So let's see. Someone that's really contemplating this gene is a clear house for ancestral patterns. And so, if you have been called to this gene key in particular, luckily you are the black sheep of your family, someone that's really trying to step outside the fear based response that you had learned from childhood. So, instead of shutting down after a heartbreak, you've decided to lean in to do the work. This becomes heartbreaking, open experiences with you. And, the reactive nature is going to stay misjudging. It's not going to complete the cycle, and it's just going to keep misfiring by making them the same mistake over and over and over again. So, this gene really asks you to learn to discern who is on your team. And, as you mentioned briefly earlier, this can be smelt. I will smell mother's milk when I'm with my team. And there can be some other indicator that comes online for you, whatever it is. And this is just a way that your body tells you, oh, these are my people. At the end of the day, nothing reincarnates but the fractal line itself. So here we're talking about our rainbow body and the subtle aspect of our causal bodies. It keeps returning, and we can become addicted to returning with a group and one single consciousness. And yet, when we can move beyond that singular idea and remember that we are all one single body, we just keep dividing. So really, there's no physical incarnation that needs to be reincarnating anymore. There's just consciousness dividing itself. So it's consciousness that survives our death. And so here we get to be on Dia de los Muertos today, remembering that consciousness survives death. And that's why when people transcend, when people move into the other realms, we get to celebrate them. This was a transmutation from one way of being to another. Dia de los Muertos gets to honor that consciousness that survived beyond death. We are that consciousness that survived beyond death. We are the embodiment of our ancestors' answered prayers. And days like today, weeks like this, we get to celebrate the aliveness of we get to take this breath. We get to be here now. We get to creatively express. And what a beautiful gift that really is. And so I hope that this week you can find someone that you totally love and trust, that you can be in complete union with, because the restoration that we experience in our nervous system from just being connected with souls that align with that same resonance of our soul mission, it's so revitalizing, it's so re-energizing, and it's so affirmative. You are here as a grid worker. Your vibration is your contribution. It is the most sacred act that you can give to humanity at this time. So thank you for being here. Thank you for being in the sacred wild on this crazy journey. Happy 333, angel number, the number of creation, 333. On that note, sending you so much love that this week you come into sacred union. We come together to recognize that it's through our interconnectedness that we accept on the human suffering so that we can transmutate it into our collective joy to bring back heaven on earth. Sending you so much love and light from a member of your team. Namaste.